Hello, and in this video we will be taking a look at context managers. A context manager is commonly used for managing resources, and if you've opened up and read from a file the correct way, you would have used the context manager a bit like this. Now, why would we want to manage resources in the first place? So let's say we're running a piece of code like this where we're opening 100,000 files and then adding them into a list. When we open a file, we consume a resource called a file descriptor, and the operating systems have a limited amount of this resource to use. So if we don't free up the resource, in this case by doing f.close, we would end up using all the resources and either crashing our operating system in the worst case scenario or cause our operating system to raise an error. Now, even if you remember to close the resource manually every time, there may be scenarios where the function before raises an exception and your call is never ran. Now, to avoid this, we can use a context manager. A context manager has the dunder enter and the dunder exit methods defined. So let's create a simple context manager to open our files. We'll implement a class file. Let's define its initializer, passing in the name and the method, and let's create a file object using the built-in open function and pass in the arguments file name and method, and let's define the dunder enter. Now, when this method is called, we want to return the file object, and then let's define our dunder exit function, which will take in the type, the value, and a traceback. And when this method is called, we want to close our file object. So self.fileObject.close. Now we can use our context manager with the with statement. So let's do with, and then use our context manager file, and we'll pass in the file name and the mode. So let's do write and give it the reference file, and inside the with statement let's do file and then write in a message, and if we give that a run, we can see it creates the file with Ola. So what happens here is the with statement calls the enter method as we enter the statement, and it also stores the exit method of that file and calls it at the end of the statement, so after we've written the Ola in, which then goes and closes the file object. Now, our exit function doesn't return anything, so if we encounter an exception in the with statement, so let's give it an undefined function and give that a run, you can see that that exception is actually raised and it's not handled by our exit method. If we want to handle it by our exit method, we can return true instead of the none. Let's print out a message here, exception handled. Now if we run the same thing again, we'll see that the exception isn't actually raised and it's handled by our exit method. So that's how you can create your own context manager. In this case, our file context manager is useless because we already have the built-in function open, which returns a context manager. And there are various other context managers in Python, like the lock object in the threading module, and the path.lib.path, and a lot more. Basically anything that requires a close call should have a context manager, and Python gives us a shortcut for creating a context manager by using the context manager decorator in the context lib library. So let's do from context lib, let's import context manager. Now, to use this decorator, we have to decorate a generator function that calls a yield exactly once. So here I've got an open file generator, so it calls yield once, and if we add the context manager decorator on there, this will now act as a context manager. Everything before the yield will be used as the dunder enter code, and everything after the yield will be used as the dunder exit code. So if we go and give this a go and run that, you can see it's created our file here. So that's what a context manager is and why we should use them. As always, if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.